Death is the only certainty we share, and yet we're rarely taught how to face it. Welcome to the podcast of the Living and Dying, a podcast where I sit with incredible humans from ancient lineages and modern frontiers, shamans, indigenous elders, artists, physicists, and death workers, to dismantle our fear of death so that we can radically reframe what it means to be alive. These are slow-burning, soul-level conversations about how to make death the most conscious experience of our lives, because when you make peace with death, you can finally live life fully. Thank you so much, Mose, for taking the time to have yet another conversation with me. One of the reasons I invited you on this podcast is because I know that you and I can slip into really deep and meaningful conversations easily for many, many years. Maybe it suffices for me to give a quick intro of who I believe you to be for me. Mose is a great friend. He's an inspiration, a spiritual guide in many ways. Many people know him for his music and for his beats. I know him because he's the one who introduced me to lucid dreaming and was the one who inspired me to look beyond conscious awareness for the answers that lie within us. And the Academy of Living and Dying, Mose, was a project I created in honoring my father, who passed away 5 years ago, actually a few weeks ago. And my father, Robert Bonville, was a great man, super inspiring. And at the end of his life, it became very apparent that the conversation around dying was very difficult to have. It was awkward, and the preparation for dying seemed to be a taboo to be discussing. And it got my wheels turning because it is the only thing we know we're gonna go through is dying. And we don't know when, but we know we will go through it. And so the preparation for this inevitable, important moment of our life is for us to choose on how we do. And I think it's an important bridge to at least begin having conversations around it so that we can destigmatize it and become more comfortable around it. So when I was thinking about having a conversation, I thought about some of the people in my life that have allowed me to go into these deep conversations naturally, and Mose came into my field of awareness. So I just wanted to welcome you to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that's definitely a topic that is of a very high interest for me as well.
Let's begin with just that question, actually. I'm very curious to know what death means to you and what is your relationship with death and dying?
For many years, I didn't really have a spiritual connection. I was raised at a Unitarian Universalist church. My dad was raised Jewish, my mom was raised Lutheran, and so they brought me into this non-denominational church and Sunday school where I learned about different religions every year in Sunday school. I feel really blessed that I had this introduction to more of a universal and non-dogmatic viewpoint of the different perspectives of the spiritual side of life. And yet at the same time, I didn't feel so connected to it at the time. I didn't feel drawn to go deeper with my spiritual understanding of things. For many years, my life was pretty dominated by just scientific materialism and what you see is what you get, basically. It wasn't until kind of my spiritual awakening, which happened at Burning Man, just being immersed in community and deep creative expression, psychedelics, that it just kind of like removed the veil and showed me that life was infinite, that it goes much deeper than what we experience here in this physical realm. This kind of awakening, or what I like to call the spiritual spark in my life, was just the beginning. And really what added fuel to that spark and made it into a full fire was my time in Guatemala at Las Piramides, a mystery school that, Gabby, I know you also have a connection with. And this really gave me the tools and kind of the map to continue that journey of deepening my understanding of the spiritual side of things. Yeah, sharing all of this is kind of like the foundation for how my view of death shifted as my spiritual understanding and my spiritual views shifted over time. Before I had a spiritual connection, my perception was that when I die, that's it. It doesn't really make sense that anything would happen to my experience if my body no longer exists. And as I started to open to and connect deeper with the spiritual side of life, it became clear to me that life does not end actually when the body dies, and that it's just more of a transition to a more subtle realm, and that we continue to experience. We just don't experience through the physical senses. We would be experiencing through our internal senses, which we also have in this realm, and which we move into every night when we go to sleep and we dream. We are experiencing, we are living without any input through our physical senses. This showed me how there is this very clear possibility, and really also with a scientific view on things, that it makes sense actually that we would continue to live and experience things even though we don't have a physical body.
What are these internal senses that you're talking about? Could you describe them?
I see them as a mirror to our physical senses. So the five senses that we have here, we also have on the other side. When we're dreaming, we can taste things, we can see things, we can hear things, we can touch things. It's all present. Essentially, it's just kind of two sides of the same coin.
In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they discuss the transitional phases of death, life into death, through the elements. It says that from the more dense elements, the earth, into the fire, which is your metabolism, it starts shutting down. Your waters, you start losing the ability to hold your waters, into the air ultimately. They call dreaming the little death. And my curiosity is, do you believe that falling asleep and waking up in our dreams has a similarity into the experience of dying?
Yeah, for me, I like that idea of calling it the little death, because I feel like it's quite similar to what happens when we have the big death. It's kind of like we're dying to our physical body every night, but we come back. And the difference is, with the big death, we don't come back to the physical body, but we still transition into the same space. And a lot of people call that the astral. If you perceive dreaming when we go to sleep at night as a little death, then it's quite easy to just kind of continue that into the big death and say, well, why wouldn't we just go to that same place when our body dies and we don't have a physical body to come back to? You know, every night we go to this place. Why wouldn't we go to that place or something similar to that when we no longer have a physical body?
Do you believe that we can all taste the astral realm with sufficient practice in lucid dreaming? And if so, what are some of these practices that you can provide insights on?
Yeah, I mean, either way, we're experiencing, right? It's like, and even people who don't remember their dreams, they are dreaming. You know, we can hook people up to EEGs and recognize that all of us are entering into REM, rapid eye movement. You can even see it with the movement of the eyes as an indicator that there's some kind of perception, internal experience that's happening. So with lucid dreaming, it's just basically bringing more presence into something that we're all automatically already experiencing, and becoming aware that we are where we are, instead of sort of moving with the inertia of our life and automatically reacting to things without being aware that we're dreaming. You know, when we're dreaming non-lucid, it's as though we are in the physical. And this is another kind of sign that it is kind of the mirror to this reality. It's so similar, actually, that we don't even realize that we're not dreaming. We think that we're just living our lives, even though there's some pretty big red flags that it's different. A lot of different things can manifest that wouldn't happen in the physical realm. And yet, because we're so conditioned and we have so much inertia in our physical lives, and so little awareness of the possibility of waking up in the astral, that it just becomes this kind of continuation of our thought patterns of of our state of being and level of presence in the physical realm. We've both studied at the same school, Las Piramides, and we've been given tools to help us become present, become lucid within the dream world. There's kind of two main practices that they share in that school. One is the candle exercise. So the idea here is before you go to sleep, you sit and you light a candle in front of you. You stare at the flame for 2 to 3 minutes, trying not to blink. And then you close your eyes. And when you close your eyes and you're in darkness, you can see an image of that candle flame as kind of like a shadow or a reflection of or an imprint, let's say, of what you've been staring at for the last 2 or 3 minutes. And the idea here is that with your eyes closed, you continue to maintain focus on that internal flame. And you do that for as long as the flame is there. And sometimes the flame can even disappear, but if you keep focusing, it can come back. The intention here is to sharpen our internal vision and our focus. So it's kind of practicing to open up the third eye, the internal eye. We can use that increased focus and attention to bridge the gap between the physical and the dream world, to become aware as we're falling asleep through concentration in that internal vision that, okay, well, there's like images that are starting to come or maybe other sensations, but we're so present with the bridge, as it's called, the bridge between the physical and the non-physical realm, that we can even maintain consciousness from one side to the other side. The other main practice that's given in this school is reality checks. So the idea is that throughout the day, we're checking in with ourselves whether or not we're possibly dreaming. And this helps to break the inertia of just assuming that we're not dreaming, because ultimately it's this assumption that we're not dreaming that we carry into the dream world, and it keeps us from ever even questioning. So if we start to question within the physical world, like, wow, like, am I dreaming? This could actually be a dream. Like, dreams are so similar to physical reality. This could actually be a dream. And just giving energy to that can help to break the inertia, and it can lead to us also making a reality check when we're dreaming, at which point gives us the opportunity to make that realization. There's a lot of different ways that we can check. A lot of people like to look at their hands. You can try and fly. Some people like to pinch themselves or pull on their finger. Kind of depends on you and what you're attracted to. Really, for me, the best one, and the one that's foolproof, because all of those things could potentially not show you that it's the dream world if you believe strongly enough that it's the physical world. You know, like pulling on your finger, it's not going to stretch if you really believe it's not going to stretch, or like trying to put your finger through your hand or so the one check that is kind of foolproof is asking yourself, how did I arrive here, and tracing it back. Ideally tracing it back and remembering when you woke up and got out of your bed, because when we are in a dream, we just arrive there, right? There's no continuity. Whereas in our physical life, there's a continuous journey from the day we're born until now. We might not remember everything in between, but at least for this day, like, we can remember when we woke up and remember basically what we've done until this moment today. Whereas in the dream, we're just in a completely new environment, generally with people that maybe we haven't even seen for a while. There's a lot of things where it's like, actually, I don't know how I got here. If you really ask that question, you really tune in, you don't know how you got there, because you just arrived there spontaneously. And that would be a pretty clear sign I'm dreaming.
On the topic of inertia, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they give exercises to calm the mind and be in a joyful state when we die, because they believe that like you just said on the bridge, that the way that you die is the way that you'll be reborn, which was fascinating for me. So there is even a state where you can be conscious within the whole dying process that you can learn throughout your life, even as a young child. So on the topic of inertia, it's great to understand, okay, am I dreaming, and to cut the inertia. But if you do not put conscious intention behind your actions or behind the frequency in which you're living, whether it's real life or a dream, you'll continue on this continuation into your next life. Do you agree with this? Do you believe that we take on the frequency or the habits of this life into the next life?
I guess the first question is, do I believe in reincarnation?
Yeah.
Which I do. And I resonate with that idea. I believe that we're kind of going through these cycles of life and death and rebirth. I see life as a school. Ultimately, we're here to learn. I think one of the main goals that we're trying to achieve is to wake up to our true nature. If we give our lives to, let's say, unvirtuous activity, then we're going to carry that into the afterlife. I think one thing that's not clear to me about the Tibetan tradition is, and maybe it's not even clear within their own teachings and beliefs, is what happened, like, is there time in between death and rebirth? From what I understand, they don't really perceive there being much time, because, for instance, like the Dalai Lama, when the Dalai Lama dies, he immediately reincarnates, right? So that points to me that there's this general belief that it's immediate. It's an immediate cycle. My idea of it is that we actually continue to live in the non-physical realm, in the astral realm, for years. Could be 100 to 3, I don't know, hundreds of years before we reincarnate back into a physical body. For me, this makes sense because it gives us an opportunity also to experience and learn and grow in the non-physical realm before we come back into the physical. This also helps to explain the idea of heaven and hell a lot. The Christian idea and the Muslim idea, as far as I understand it, is that essentially we just have this one life. My belief is that we don't reincarnate immediately after we die, that we actually have time to experience in the non-physical realm, in the astral realm as well. And that if we're here to learn, it also makes sense that we would be there on the other side also to learn, and to learn without some of the limitations that we have in the physical form. So this also helps to explain heaven and hell, the Christian or the Islamic idea of heaven and hell. The Christian idea is more rooted in this idea that when we die, it's our only life. We were only here once. There were no lives before that. And when we pass, based on this life's actions, we could either go to heaven or we go to hell, or somewhere in between, purgatory. This idea of kind of inertia, which you were pointing towards, it helps actually to explain, and it connects with the idea of heaven and hell as well. And instead of it being this omniscient being who kind of judges us and decides where we go, the idea is more that we are actually deciding. We are creating our reality based on the way that we live our lives in this lifetime and the ones previous, if you believe in that. But if we isolate it just to this lifetime, if we live a really good life, we treat people well, we are in service, we do whatever we can to uplift the people around us, there's a really positive vibration there that when our physical body dies, we're going to carry it into the non-physical realm and create, essentially we're going to be in heaven then, because of the life that we've been living and the inertia of that vibration of being in service and being a good person that carries through. And in a way, it's just like the mechanics of things. There's no judge saying, oh, you did this and this and this, you didn't do that. It's just the inertia of our life that carries through into the non-physical realm. Whereas if we were a bad person and we were mistreating people, we were stealing from people, we were killing people. We're going to die with a density, with a heaviness, with fear, with darkness. We might think that someone's going to come after us for revenge. There's going to be fear and low vibration, let's say, in our being when we pass. And that will continue as well with inertia. We might just have nightmares the whole time that we exist on the other side because of the things that we've done when we had our physical body. So in this sense, it's really just the mechanics of our minds and our hearts that carries over into the non-physical realm that creates the vibration that we experience. And it's not some judgment that's coming down on us. It's like we are actually manifesting the heaven or the hell or whatever in between based on the way that we live our lives.
I find it so interesting when you talk about time, because when we enter altered states of consciousness, whether it's with psychedelics or dreams, it feels to me that time changes. And our identification in the physical realm is much different than when it is in at least for myself, in my dreams. So when we talk about time in the bardos or in the transition phases, how do we measure time if this is an identification thing that we do in the physical realm? Do you understand what I mean?
That's a good question. And I think there's a lot that's very unknown about that. I think there's for sure a correspondence between time and the perception of time and the non-physical and the physical. Yet there's stories of people who seemingly have lived years in a dream and then they wake up. So what's going on there? There's some kind of elasticity of time that is available to us in the non-physical realm, and it doesn't correspond one-to-one. Potentially when we die, maybe we review our past life, like we go through our whole life, and maybe even beyond that, before we're even released from that to then kind of start living a new life. That would be a long time from this perspective, from the physical perspective. But if the mechanics, if there's more elasticity on the other side, then it could permit experiencing many more events in the same amount of time.
Have you ever died in a dream?
Not that I can recall.
Me neither. Do you think it's possible to die in a dream?
I guess you'd have to define death. What does that even mean, to die in a dream?
To enter permanently into a subtler state of awareness.
In that case, you could say it's just moving into a different, let's say, dimension or frequency of the same place that you already were.
I just don't think that we can't really imagine or dream dying if we don't know what dying is, unless we remember what dying is from previous lifetimes. It's just, how can we dream something we've never experienced before?
That's a good question. And actually, there's a philosopher, Hume, who spoke a lot about that, of like, basically, if you have never seen a particular color in the physical realm, or even better, if you were born blind, can you ever see in the non-physical realm? Based on interviews, you can't. That limitation is reflected. And I think that it also says something about what we have access to when we dream, when we go to sleep. It seemed like that kind of information seems to point to the idea that we only have access to the experiences that we've had in this particular life. But maybe if we can go deeper, if we can somehow accelerate our vibration, we can transcend the experiences of this individual life and tap into experiences from previous lives, in which case we probably could see. And maybe that's what happens with the big death.
Do you ever fear death yourself?
I don't think it's possible to not fear death completely. maybe there is someone out there who doesn't, but I would say that my fear of death is very minimal because of the way that I perceive what death is. If I believed that it was the end and I, like this is all I have, then yeah, I'm going to lose everything. If I perceive that I'm just going to lose this physical body, my physical possessions, of course, the relationships that I have in this lifetime would be lost to some extent. Maybe I can reunite with some of these people. Ultimately, just recognizing that it's a transition gives me a lot of peace.
If you were given a month to live, is there anything that you would want to make sure that you do before you die?
I live a really good life. I live my dream. I live I do the things that I dream about doing. And at this point in my life, being a musician and touring the world and sharing music, I've been given a lot of incredible experiences, and I literally get paid to play. I don't feel like I've missed out on too much. Of course, there's always another place to see or another thing to do, but if I had a month to live, I think I would probably just really give a lot of focus and attention to deepening my relationship with my dreams, spending time with the people that I love. And I would not have regrets, which feels pretty amazing.
This was a question that I had for anybody. Well, there's two. There's one on legacy and there's one on grief. So what kind of legacy actually matters to you? What is it that you hope to leave behind when you do die?
I would say that specifically within my career, within this realm of music, I hope that I leave a legacy that shows future generations that we can gather and dance and share music in ways that can be really healing and wholesome and family friendly, and that we don't need to destroy our bodies in the process with drugs and alcohol. I pray that what me and some of my peers, what we're doing right now with these alternative dance containers is providing a template for the future. I pray that this template continues to be refined and built upon and becomes the standard rather than the niche.
And in terms of grief, have you ever lost anybody that was very meaningful to you? And how did you go through the grieving process? What do you think grief is?
I would say, actually the closest I have is my dog. Fortunately, both my parents are alive. I haven't lost any siblings or aunts or uncles. My grandparents died when I was quite young. I haven't actually had a death in the family that's very close to me. I loved my dog, and it was really hard to lose him, to lose Rufus. And I think that for me, the grief comes from recognizing that this animal, this being that I had such a beautiful connection with and that who brought me joy in my life, that's no longer available to me. And so in a way, it's like something from myself also that has died, because the experiences that I had and that could have continued having with that individual are no longer available to me. Actually, as I speak, there was a friend that I went to elementary school with and junior high and high school, and he wasn't a close friend, but he was there with me in my childhood from the early years. I don't know if he was born with it, but from a very young age, he had like a brain tumor or something where he had a major health issue, like he had to wear a helmet, and he died when I was in high school. And I remember grieving so much around what he never got to experience, this feeling of deep sadness that he died so young and there's so much life that he never got to live. And as I reflect on how I felt and how sad that made me feel, I think it was also my own projection, like, and fear. What if that happened to me? I would lose all of this. I would never be able to experience all of these things. And there's like fear there. And I think that in general, there is this kind of two-sided aspect to anyone who dies in our life that we care about. There's the side of like the death of that relationship and the fact that we can no longer relate with that person and experience life with that person. And this other side of our reflecting ourselves in them and them reflecting to us the fact that we will also die, and having to confront the fact that we will also die and reminding us very clearly, like, I'm also going to just disappear at some point. And I think that awakens a fear within us.
But what do you think that fear is if we know that it might be a continuation? We understand that most of our fears come from fear of dying, but what do you think about it makes it so fearful?
We might know. It awakens in that fear of the unknown. We don't know, like this might be it. That includes really religious people, people who are very staunchly Catholic, for instance. Like there's still doubt in the hearts of everyone because we don't actually know. It's a belief. And that belief is really put under fire when someone near us dies and reminds us, like, I'm going to die. Like, what's going to happen? And if there is this idea of also hell, like, have I been good enough? Like, am I going to just like suffer when I die? Am I just going to suffer for eternity? That's pretty scary. Unless we're able to scientifically prove the nature of the astral realm and that it is where we go when we die, and all of these steps in between where we can actually confidently say and understand, and that it transcends belief into the realm of understanding, I think until that point, death is going to be a taboo.
Yeah, it seems like a taboo. And one of the things that happened too was when my father died, he had a priest by his side. And it was so unusual because he didn't ever go to church. How would you want to have your last moments of dying?
That to me kind of points to this last kind of prayer, this last, like, wow, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, maybe the Christians were right, like, just in case. This kind of thing. Yeah, kind of covering your bases, right? And I do also think that it, as we're approaching death, it does awaken us, our spiritual connection. So in the case with your dad, maybe he just didn't have much of a spiritual relationship, whether it was through Christianity or any other religion. And as he's approaching death, like, it forces you to really open to that and question and, like, yeah, evaluate your ideas and your beliefs. And so it may have also been like very authentic for him to deepen and to open to that relationship with Jesus or with God through the Christian lens, right? I think in my case, just having the people that I love the most around me to see me off would be the ideal.
In the beginning of this conversation, and thank you, Mose, this is such powerful and like profound questions to go into, and you did. Thank you for being so vulnerable with your answers. You said, what if we were to live our lives to go back to our true nature? And I remember one of the first times I met you was at Eagle's Nest in Guatemala. And I remember watching you DJ, and all of these people were adoring you. And yet you were staying so humble and with the music. And you said to me, I give it back to God. I just, with that attention and in the moment, I give it back to God. What do you think it means to go back to our true nature?
I think our true nature is unity in its deepest form. I think we're on the path to becoming more and more connected to this reality. We are very interconnected on Earth here in this physical realm, but there's also a lot of perceived separation, which is an illusion and which we buy into moment to moment. And I see you have your own body, you're over there, I have my body, we're separate. We're not actually connected at all. But if you go deeper and deeper in these layers of who we are, for me, it's clear that we are actually one. We are united. And so that is our essence. And it's a deeper layer, deeper level of our true essential nature. And the separateness is real also. So I do believe that this school is helping us to awaken to this deeper aspect of unity and to feel that on more and more subtle levels. It makes me wonder if, as we evolve, as our soul evolves, it makes sense to me that we would probably let go of the need to be as separate. I think that in this physical realm, in this dimension that we exist, we are learning what it means to be more separate. And I think that as we progress, we will let go of the attachment to the ego, the attachment to our individual identity, to our bodies. And as we let go of that attachment, we'll be absorbed more and more into this unity state of existence.
Thank you. I guess one final question, and we'll leave it at that. We can have more conversations later. But when it comes to your creations and your music, does death influence the way that you create in any way or form?
I think so, indirectly. It's not like I'm thinking about death all the time, but I mean, if you look at all the major religions, the primary question that they're all trying to answer is what happens when we die. So this is very revealing about this uncertainty that we all have and this desire to know, this desire to understand. and how deeply rooted it is in our consciousness or subconscious. So even when we're not aware, I mean, a lot of people say that all fear is rooted in the fear of death, that the fear of death is the ultimate fear. And any other fear that we have, if you like go to the root of it, ultimately it leads to I'm scared to die. Of course, it's informing my life and my work and whether or not I'm aware of it or not.
I mean, just for me and my experience of having done multiple residencies with you, with Momentum, and also having been in many of your events, there is this feeling that I get in your field of musicality that it is this in between state where I'm there but not there. I'm awake but I'm dreaming. It's this in between state that your art allows for me to get into, but I would bet that most people on the dance floor are also feeling that. And I would even gamble to say that it is what creates this field that is in high resonance for all of us to hold each other in this in between state. And it's one of the reasons I've so enjoyed your music and your art, actually, and what makes you different from from so many other artists. So that's why I was asking and wondering if your art was informed by death in the sense of not the completion of something, but in the in between state of living and dying.
Yeah, that I can connect more consciously, let's say, because for me, creating music, sharing music, it is a practice. And the intention is always to open up these deeper states of consciousness and this feeling that we're like one together on the dance floor. So yeah, when I'm creating like every day in the studio, that's how I'm like trying to find that. Every time I open a project, I'm like trying to get back to that state, and I'm using the music as a tool to help me peel back the layers and get there. So with that being my intention with music, of course, it's then available for other people to tap into that intention, tap into that vibration. I find I was just reflecting on this today. It's kind of interesting you mention it, because I was just reflecting on how like I'm not interested in entertainment. I'm interested in going deep. And this also means that sometimes I have hard sets. I have experiences where it just doesn't land. I never get there. We never get there, or at least as far as I can tell. Like, I'll then get feedback after these sets that are, for me, are more challenging, that people had an incredible experience. And they have no idea that I was struggling. And yet I do hold such a high standard for myself. And like my North Star is to go so deep that if I don't get there, I feel like I've failed. I failed myself, and I failed the dance floor. I failed the people who came. And so I've been evaluating my process, evaluating my intentions, and just kind of asking myself the question of like, is this okay? If it's not okay, why? And, so it's brought about some pretty existential inquiries. And I think it points to what you're talking about and what you feel on the dance floor when I'm playing. And ultimately, yeah, that's what I'm going for.
I mean, we started off this podcast before I hit record on saying thank you for being part of my never ending social experimentation. And I think that as artists, having the courage to find that pocket of information, revelation, unity consciousness for our fellow humans to ride with is part of it. And I can say that I trust you in experiencing and finding that pocket, for lack of better word, that place where we are in the in-between state together. And I think it is important to have different flavors and different colors so that we don't become habituated again in the same pattern over and over again, which is what leads to inertia, isn't it? In my opinion, that's what it is. And so I definitely found you here in Montreal. You do come to Montreal now a number of times, I think, and I know that a lot of people are excited. But when I was in the cathedral with you, I was like, this is very different from Guatemala. And I remember talking to you about it. And I really appreciated that social experimentation and allowing us to not become dormant in what we are becoming attached, that downbeat, that down tempo, Mose vibe, vibration, frequency that seems to be what we call in French nous bercer. It's what cradles me when I'm in your set, but sometimes it becomes too comfortable. And so to go into that adventure with you is part of being with you.
I appreciate that.
I'm going to leave it at that. And for those who would like more information on this very special man, What's your website where they can find you?
mosemusica.com.
And Instagram, Mose with dogs? No, kidding.
That's one way. Also Mose Musica. But yeah, all the links are on my website.
Thank you, Mose, for being one of the very first. You're such a good friend, and I love you very much.
Thank you, Gabby. Really deep joy to explore these topics with you today.